What is going on, everyone? How are you doing? I hope you're doing good, because it is good to feel good. And today is a very special video because today we are celebrating an anniversary on this YouTube channel, and it is on this day back in 2011 that I officially started this channel, and it is officially 15 years old. So yeah, let's celebrate that, guys. I haven't got any party poppers or anything like that, but we just celebrate it, whoop whoop, and all sorts. And as is per tradition, when I do these anniversary videos, here's a little snippet of my very first video. I love how I always put that in there each year as like, it's more of a running joke, but at the same time it's a reflection of how far I've come, kind of like personally, and like, you know, what I've done professionally as well in my life since then. And I just always love to say, you know, in my head, to that Ollie from 15 years ago, you're only 14 years old, but you know what, you're gonna do alright, you're gonna go far, and you're gonna be just fine. Just keep going and doing what you're doing, because you'll love it. But anyway, what is the tradition with my anniversary videos on March the 12th each year is that I love to talk about, like, you know, a topic or a passion or something I like, you know, reflect on something. And this year is no different, because I'm going to be talking about something that I attended a few years ago that I really enjoyed, and I want to do a nice little retrospective on. But to give some background onto it, I'm sure you guys obviously know that I am a massive wrestling fan, and I make it no secret on that regard. So to put this into perspective, I was 5 years old when I first started watching like wrestling on the regular, i.e. WWE, and then obviously branched out into other promotions, and now I am 29 years old. Which just feels mad. It does feel the odd little bit depressing because I'm pushing 30, but you know, we've had a great life of watching wrestling either way. And then with me watching wrestling throughout the years, I've been fortunate enough to have attended, like, you know, indie shows, house shows, TV tapings, and even big pay-per-view events. And the latter is one of the things that I'm going to be talking about today, and this is coming from an event that I attended a few years ago, and it's certainly just turned into one of my favourites. And this is basically my retrospective of attending WrestleMania 40. So to give a bit of background to this, I have been watching WrestleMania like throughout all my life basically, and even in years gone back to watch every WrestleMania. But during my younger years, I would always distinctly remember like not watching WrestleMania live, but like I would have a friend who would, like, you know, tape WrestleMania from what they've recorded and let me borrow the tapes so I can watch it myself. And even in some years, like getting the home video release, whether that be on VHS or on DVD. That just really does show my age, because there are some kids who are born these days who are like, what the hell are these? But yeah, so that would be the case. And then going into my adulthood, I would stay up to watch WrestleMania and, you know, have a fun time doing so. Most times I would go to like watch-along parties and, you know, have a good time with the people that are there. But the dream was always there in the back of my mind of, will I or won't I go to WrestleMania one day? And then sure enough, I made that a reality in 2019 when I attended my first WrestleMania, which was WrestleMania 35, held at MetLife Stadium in East Rutherford, New Jersey. And looking back on that in retrospect, I did enjoy the event, but there are some kind of like side notes that it was just like, yeah, there was just some bits that I felt underwhelming. So the pros of the event were, it's my first WrestleMania, I'm there to have a good time, and there's a lot of great, you know, great big stacked card. It was bloody massive that year. And there was some really good feel-good moments throughout the night. So there was Kofi Kingston winning the WWE Championship, and then Becky Lynch in the main event, winning both Raw and Smackdown women's titles, and it was the first time as well that women had main evented WrestleMania. But my downside to it is that the length was very, very bloody long. 7.5 hours from pre-show to the end of the main event. So yeah, you could literally fly from London to New York in that time, and yeah, you could still, WrestleMania would still be going. But yeah, so that was one of my detracting points from it. Also, there were some underwhelming moments on the night. I'm still cross at the Kurt Angle retirement match where he lost to Baron Corbin. That was just horrible, but I digress. It was a first time experience, you know. There's a lot to learn from, I guess, as the, you know, attending it for future reference potentially, but it kind of gave me the get up and go to be like, I want to run this back one day. I was initially thinking of going to WrestleMania 39 in Los Angeles back in 2023, but that unfortunately never came to fruition, although rather ironically I did actually go to Los Angeles later in the year. I was there with a few friends, and I did have a lingering thought whilst I was there of whether or not I go to Philadelphia in 2024 for WrestleMania 40, and then sure enough, after I come back from Philadelphia, I'm like, yep, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna go ahead and do it and have a good time. So that set the stage of that. I was like, book my tickets for WrestleMania in December that year, and then the following month in January I then booked my flights out to Philadelphia, and then we're gonna get that going from there. So before I talk about what I did at WrestleMania, I thought I might as well talk about what I got to when I was in Philadelphia. So of course this was my first time being in Philadelphia, so I had a lot to experience, but of course one thing I did know is that it's always sunny there. So a few things I did see in Philadelphia included the Liberty Bell, of course one of the big known symbols of the city, and literally just around the corner from where I was staying. I also saw across the street as well, the Independence Hall, where the Declaration of Independence was signed, and to think that was nearly 250 years ago, which sounds mad when you think about it. I went to the Rocky Steps and obviously sprinted up the Rocky Steps as well. I also saw the Philadelphia Museum of Art, and obviously had to do a nice little big pose there when I was at the Rocky Steps. Later that evening I went to Remix Rumble, and shout out to Rohan and the crew there. I remember distinctly just a few days prior to this, Rohan was asking for just an open call for anyone who could help film for the event, and then I put my name forward, and then it was just such a fun evening. In fact, I'm going to just show some of my favourite clips from that event. That latter clip in particular was very fun because, like, you know, I knew Mark Henry was announced as a special guest DJ for it, and I thought this would be a cool moment with him, like, you know, getting the crowd to, like, you know, go along with his entrance theme. And even later that year I uploaded it on TikTok, and sure enough it went viral, which was a very cool moment. I picked the right time to upload it, and then the algorithm picked it up, and I was like, oh, it's got nearly 100,000 views by the end of the first evening, and then eventually reached 1 million views, and I'm like, I've never had a video on any platform before hit 1 million views, and I'm like, buzzing, good stuff. Good times. But yeah, it was a very fun evening, and really, aside from WrestleMania, it was also one of my favourite moments from being in Philly that year. Then the following day, I was at WWE World at the Philadelphia Convention Center. I made a very spontaneous decision to go ahead and get a new tattoo, and it was this tattoo here that was in tribute of the late Bray Wyatt. On the topic of Bray Wyatt, there was a really nice exhibit there that was in tribute to his, like, a lot of memorabilia from throughout the years. There was also the set of the Firefly Funhouse with some of the puppets from that, and also the door with the light shining through it from his brief stint when he returned to WWE before his untimely passing. Then later that evening I was at Smackdown at what was, I still call it by the old venue's name, the Wells Fargo Center. I know it's now the Xfinity Center, or I think the Xfinity Arena, but it's like how in Los Angeles you've got the Crypto.com Arena, but I still have a habit of calling it the Staples Center. But anyway, I still can't wrap my head around that when, like, venues change, but you still remember it by the old name. But anyway, I was at Smackdown that night at the Arena. We'll just call it the Arena. The ending segment of that Smackdown, which was set the ground for the weekend, was Cody Rhodes, Seth Rollins, and Jey Uso coming out to confront the Bloodline, setting the stage there of what was to come. And then after that we had the WWE Hall of Fame induction ceremony, which saw Roman Reigns induct his wise man Paul Heyman into the WWE Hall of Fame, and I thought it was very fitting that Paul Heyman was being inducted in Philadelphia, of course the birthplace of ECW.
If you think that the spirit of ECW died in a bankruptcy court in 2001, you can suck my fucking dick!
Yeah! Woo! And then then of course later in the night as well was the induction of the US Express, so the team of Mike Rotunda and Barry Windham. They were inducted by Taylor Rotunda and his sister Mika. It was a very touching moment when they acknowledged Windham, their late brother Windham, i.e. Bray Wyatt. And I remember getting really emotional during that moment, because it was like he would have loved to have been part of that with his family. And I'm really, you know, quite sad that he never got to experience that, you know, his father being inducted, his uncle being inducted. But, you know, at the end of their speech, they did give, like, a very lovely tribute to Bray Wyatt, and even bless him. Mike Rotunda on that night was very emotional during that moment. And even when Bray Wyatt's music played in the arena, I got goosebumps, but it felt special. And, you know, I might have been crying my eyes out, but it was lovely to be a part of that moment. Then the following morning was NXT Stand Deliver, also at what was the Wells Fargo Center. Some of my highlights from this show were including seeing Obafemi defending the North American Championship against Josh Briggs and Dijak in a big match where, in the words of Big E, it was all sorts of big meaty men slapping all kinds of meat. That never gets old, and it was just very hard hitting and just some great offense for some big guys in that match. And also later on that show was the main event, which was Trick Williams versus Carmelo Hayes. And what was quite cool to acknowledge was that it was the first time in over 20 years that two black male wrestlers had main evented a pay-per-view, and the last time they had done that, last time WWE had done that rather, was at SummerSlam 2001, which was between Booker T and The Rock. Quite a coincidence, because Booker T, even to this day, is on commentary for NXT, so it was quite nice for them to acknowledge that. And of course, you know, Trick Williams picking up his steam, whoop that trick. Hey up, let's whoop that trick, as I said at Smackdown a few months ago. And then coming out of the arena, then of course it's like, yeah, we're heading straight across the street and we're going to be going to WrestleMania shortly. One cool thing I do quickly want to acknowledge is that I celebrated the concept of what's called a metric birthday. So essentially, the idea of a metric birthday is if you reach a certain milestone of days, then that's a metric birthday in some form. So on the 6th of April 2024, I celebrated 10,000 days of my lifespan, so that was pretty cool. I only found out after I'd come back from that, but it was really cool to be in a place where I was going to be enjoying something that I really loved with a passion, i.e. wrestling. And, you know, we were just about to go into WrestleMania, and then going into the stadium itself, Lincoln Financial Field, it was really nice to, you know, see everything all set up, and, you know, from my view from where I was going to be sitting, I thought, yeah, this is going to be bloody amazing. There was one point before the show started where it was actually a very cold night on the first night of WrestleMania 40. The sun started to shine just briefly, and we were all cheering, and then the sun went behind the clouds, and then we all started booing, and I was like, the sun's just turning heel. But then to kick off the show, we had Triple H, of course, announcing this, you know, this was the dawn of a new era. Welcome to a new time. That's what Triple H sounds like in my head, and I love how the whole "this is the dawn of a new era" thing has just become a running joke and a meme now, because I'd have lost track of the amount of times during his time as like Chief Content Officer where he's announced that, but it's just like, this shit never gets old. But hey ho, I did actually feel like, you know, on the night itself, this was going to be something special. Kicking off the show, we had Rhea Ripley versus Becky Lynch for the Women's World title. Shout out to both women, by the way, on the night, because they were dealing with issues both physically and mentally. So Becky Lynch, if I remember correctly, was suffering from strep throat, so her body temperature was much lower going into the weekend. And then Rhea Ripley had an anxiety attack just before the show. But then, you know, she bigged herself up, and also shout out to Motionless and White, performed her out to the ring and sang our entrance theme. That felt very cool for her, and, you know, that really put her in a good mood. And, you know, she retained as well, because Mummy's always on top, and big up the Rhea bloody Ripley. The next match after this was a 6-way tag team ladder match, and I gotta say, I always have a soft spot for a ladder match at WrestleMania. I know last year had a TLC match on Smackdown after WrestleMania, and the fact that that didn't make it to WrestleMania is a sin in itself. You know, people should be punished for that decision. But going back to it, I love ladder matches at WrestleMania. Of course, one of my favourite variations of the ladder match is the TLC match, which we got the TLC 2 at WrestleMania X7. Throughout many years, there was the Money in the Bank ladder match at WrestleMania, the OG ladder match, the first televised one that is, between Shawn Michaels and Razor Ramon at WrestleMania 10. All some great stuff throughout these WrestleManias, but my highlight of this match was, of course, R-Truth. You know, to still doing the whole I want to be part of Judgment Day, and you know, even going as far as taking the tag titles away from the Judgment Day as well. It's good stuff, and it was a really nice conclusion to that few months of what they were building towards. And I thought, you know what, it was a bit cringe at first, but then it grew on me because R-Truth is just great at, like, you know, anything and everything to do with comedy, and especially during this match where he's doing, like, you know, the whole John Cena shtick. He does a hot tag, he does the 5 moves of doom, and then he goes for the attitude adjustment and he's trying to get the pin, but it's like, Truth, you can't win by pinfall in a ladder match. And then, of course, like, one of the ending shots of the match is him and Miz winning the Raw Tag Team titles, and also it was R-Truth's very first WrestleMania victories, and a very good WrestleMania moment for him. So big up the R-Truth, and we always love you, like, and what he does. The next match after this was the tag team match, which was between Rey Mysterio and Andrade versus Dominic Mysterio and Santos Escobar. I love that for the second year in a row, Rey and Dominic were coming head to head with one another at WrestleMania. I thought it was a very fun and exciting match throughout, and I was kind of caught off guard by the two men disguised as luchadors, and also had, like, you know, the Philadelphia Eagles colours as well. And lo and behold, it's Lane Johnson and Jason Kelsey, who are former players of the Philadelphia Eagles. Now, I'll be quite honest, I don't know much about American football, but I know Jason Kelsey is, of course, going to be the brother-in-law of Taylor Swift later this year, if you really think about it. But that's probably as far as my American football knowledge goes, if I'm being quite honest. Then, following this match, we had what I felt was quite a bit of an underwhelming match, in my opinion. Probably the lowest point of WrestleMania. It was Jimmy Uso versus Jey Uso, and I thought we were going to get a really good match, like, out of these two, and the story that they were telling kind of really set the bar for that. But I guess don't you know, set your expectations too high, because things like this could happen. And it ultimately just devolved into super kick after super kick after super kick, and it did get really boring just seeing that over and over again. There was even a spot where, like, you know, Jimmy Uso is, like, feigning an apology towards Jey, but of course Jimmy Uso is obviously doing his whole little bunch of tricks. But then, of course, the match ends, you know, another super kick, Jey Uso hits the spear on Jimmy and then goes for a splash, 1, 2, 3, and he's won the match. And it's just really did feel a bit underwhelming, and I feel like a stipulation could have definitely helped that match. The next match we had after that was a 6-woman tag, which was the team of Asuka and Kairi Sane along with Dakota Kai, i.e. Damage Control, against Bianca Belair, Naomi and Jade Cargill. And I gotta say, it was really nice to, you know, do a nice showcase for Jade Cargill in this match. One thing that I do love in particular with there's this big old spot where like, they're all hitting the big moves on each other for the finish, and there's one spot where Asuka's going for the, like, you know, spray her poison mist on Naomi. Naomi ducks out, and then Kairi Sane gets hit with the mist. You know, that takes her out of the equation. Then Asuka goes to attack Bianca Belair, and then Bianca Belair uses her hair braid to whip Asuka. Let me just show the clip. Oh! Ho, ho, ho! Crikey! The fact that you could hear that all the way up here was just crazy. And then, of course, she hits the KOD. And then, of course, you know, it's just between Jade Cargill and Dakota Kai. And, of course, Cargill hits the Jaded on Kai, and that's enough for the victory. So good luck stuff for the women. The next match after this was one of my favourites from the weekend, which was Gunther versus Sami Zayn for the Intercontinental Championship. I really love Sami Zayn as, like, the underdog, and, you know, he's very good at portraying the underdog in many certain aspects. This was one of them. You know, he earned a match with Gunther at WrestleMania, and And what I loved about this was that obviously Gunther was being the cocky heel, he was hitting out all his big moves, but then he got a bit too cocky, then he started hitting the moves and obviously taking his time. Sami Zayn takes advantage of that, where he delivers a Helluva Kick in the corner, and then in the vein of El Generico, if you know, you know, he hits a top rope brainbuster to Gunther, and then 2 consecutive Helluva Kicks after that. 1, 2, 3. Sami Zayn is the new Intercontinental Championship, and it was such a lovely moment. And also, Gunther's reign as Intercontinental Champion ended as well. So not only did Gunther break the record as the longest reigning Intercontinental Champion, but he also broke the record as the longest Intercontinental Champion for consecutive reigns, even if it was just under that one reign. So big up the Gunther. Then we had the night 1 main event, which was Roman Reigns and The Rock versus Cody Rhodes and Seth freaking Rollins. I will be quite honest, I remember having very cold feet in the initial build to this match. Like, you know, the whole, oh, Cody Rhodes has won the Rumble, but he's not going to challenge Roman Reigns at WrestleMania. Then The Rock comes out and is like, I'm taking your spot. And then, of course, that then gets retconned in favour of, you know, Cody officially going to challenge Roman with the backing of the fans. And, of course, The Rock then turning heel. I had cold feet about The Rock being involved in this. But boy, was I proven wrong. And honestly, I feel like The Rock was doing some of his best character work in, like, probably since the Ruthless Aggression era, if I really think about it. And even akin back to that, it was very much shades of Hollywood Rock from 2003, and even going as far as bringing back that entrance music. So combining his then entrance music, then transitioning into that theme. Absolutely incredible. But yeah, I remember, like, you know, what kind of capacity is The Rock going to have? And then, of course, The Rock, just like, you know, almost week after week is, you know, doing his great heel shtick, does a rock concert, and, you know, he's obviously, you know, has beef with Mama Rose and all sorts. And the Raw that was in Chicago in the lead up to that WrestleMania, where you see Rock bloodying Cody, that was like, this is where I was like, they're creating something special with this. So then we obviously get to the match itself. We see, you know, The Rock obviously playing into his heel persona, and you know he's cheating throughout the match and obviously exploiting his position as the final boss. He can't get counted out. He can't get disqualified. There's a spot in the match where he goes for a people's elbow, and then of course Cody counters that with the Cody Cutter. Then there's also a spot where Roman's gonna go and spear Cody, and obviously Rock's holding him in place. Then Seth Rollins obviously pushes Cody out of the way to save him, and then The Rock gets inadvertently speared by Roman. Then towards the end of the match, you've got Cody delivering a rock bottom to The Rock through an announce table. Then, and literally straight after, a few seconds later, you've got Roman Reigns spearing Seth Rollins through the barricade. And then the ending stretch where you've got Cody going for, like, you know, the 3 consecutive spears he tried to do the previous year, but of course Rock hitting his weight belt and, like, again cracking the whip. And then of course Roman hits a spear, then tags Rock in, goes for a rock bottom, then the people's elbow, 1, 2, 3, and The Rock and Roman have won. And we're setting the stage for the following night. What I loved about this match was that it would set the stipulation for night 2's main event, and of course with them winning it was going to be Bloodline rules. And shout out to Sandy's app, because that was one thing he loved saying back in the day. I say back in the day, 2 years ago when this was all going on. So then of course I remember Cody just, like, you know, he's sitting there and he's like, he's sitting in the exact same position when he lost the championship match to Roman the previous year, and I was just like, oh, this could set the stage for something incredible for the following night. And then the following night we get obviously night 2 of WrestleMania 40. It was much warmer on this night, if I remember correctly, and even the sun stayed out until it set, so that felt a lovely little backdrop for this WrestleMania night in particular. So to kick off this night, we had Stephanie McMahon coming out, obviously again picking up Triple H, and of course welcoming us to WrestleMania. Then we had obviously the opening match, which was Drew McIntyre versus Seth Rollins for the World Heavyweight Championship. I always distinctly remember, you know, Drew doing the Claymore straight out of the gate, and I thought he was going to win there and then, because I know Seth Rollins was completely banged up and he was basically, his body was broken, and that also played into later in the night. But come there shortly. I love during the match, Drew McIntyre took his wife's phone and he tweeted, you know, bored at work, lol. And I love how he's like, he even did something similar at last year's WrestleMania, which I thought was pretty funny. And I'm hoping he does something similar in this year as well, so fingers crossed to that. But yeah, we had that, and of course the teasing towards CM Punk as well. Punk was, I think, originally penciled to face Rollins for the World Heavyweight Championship at this WrestleMania, but of course Punk got injured during the Rumble and that never came to fruition. But CM Punk was on commentary for this match, so there's a nice shout there. Then, like, you know, the ending stretch of the match where you've got Drew McIntyre delivering 2 Claymores, and then 1, 2, 3, Drew McIntyre is the champion. I was so over the moon, because it's like, it's finally nice to see Drew McIntyre win a world championship in WWE in front of a live crowd. The last 2 times he won the WWE championship was during COVID, and of course, no one's allowed to be there during COVID, so that felt a very lovely moment. And as a Brit as well, you know, seeing my countrymen win a world championship, that felt special. But of course, Drew McIntyre decided to just rub it in the face of CM Punk. CM Punk then attacked him, and then of course the Damian Priest comes out, and of course he cashes in his Money in the Bank, beating Drew McIntyre in less, and obviously Drew McIntyre is champion for just, I can't remember the exact time, but I think it was around 5 minutes, 45 seconds. I can't remember the exact time, but I know it was around the 5-minute mark. But what I found cool about that when Priest cashed in was that I was at Money in the Bank in London the previous year, and I had seen then all the way down the line, 9 months later, Damian Priest then cashing in his Money in the Bank contract. So the fact that I saw both of those moments live in person was actually really cool. So yeah, that was really nice for Damian Priest to get that moment. And then following that match, we then had the Philadelphia Street Fight, which was between Bobby Lashley and the Street Profits versus Karrion Kross and the Authors of Pain. One of my highlights of the match upon watching this back was the commentary by Snoop Dogg during this match. He's just having a right old laugh. He doesn't really know what's going on, probably because he's a bit high, but he's just having a good time. And then someone's pulling out a table and he's like, oh, we got picnic tables? And then he's like, well, hey boo boo, here comes the Yogi Bear with a picnic table. And it's just that was funny. And then of course Bubba Ray Dudley is the special guest referee during this match, and there's obviously, like, you know, paying tribute to the Dudley boys, you know, the what's up, and then the headbutt to the groin, and then of course the get the tables, and then of course, you know, someone goes for the tables. That was all lovely stuff, and again, very fitting to do that in Philadelphia, the birthplace of ECW. The next match we had was the LA Knight versus AJ Styles. I remember this match, like, as much as I've watched this back recently, and I actually do really enjoy this match, but the one thing that really took away from me, unfortunately, was the blinding lights that were shining throughout the Lincoln Financial Field during this match. I don't know who was playing about with them, but it just really did overshadow, like, you know, me enjoying this match. I still enjoyed it nonetheless, but it's just like, I wish someone could have just stopped playing about with the lights. But one thing I do want to talk about quickly is, I love how the build to this match was almost set in stone when, during the Elimination Chamber in Australia a few months prior, you had LA Knight in that match, and AJ Styles comes out to attack LA Knight and take him out of the match. And I love the fact that AJ Styles, being a flat earth skeptic and all sorts, flied all the way around the world, or nearly off the edge of the earth, at the risk of that, to come out and just cost AJ Styles. To come out and cost LA Knight in this in that match. Very good stuff, and that's why we love wrestling. Following this, we had the triple threat, which was for the United States Championship, so Logan Paul defending against Kevin Owens and Randy Orton. I do love that during this match we kind of had the will they won't they between Kevin Owens and Randy Orton. And they eventually did come to blows. There was a really fun spot where you've got Randy Orton going for a punt kick to Logan Paul. Then the Prime Bottle that's at ringside, who's in disguise, comes out to save him, and then of course the Prime Bottle then reveals himself to be I Show Speed, and it like got a massive reaction. And then of course Randy Orton then delivers a big kick, and it kicks Speed out of the Prime Bottle, and then of course he does an RKO on the announce table. And then of course the ending stretch where you've got Kevin Owens going for a pop-up powerbomb, Orton counters that into an RKO, and then of course Logan Paul taking advantage of that, and then of course retaining the United States Championship. Then we had the match after that, Io Sky versus Bayley for the WWE Women's Championship. Of course, Bayley won the Women's Royal Rumble earlier that year, and she set her sights on Io Sky as a little bit of payback towards Damage Control. And what I really enjoyed about this match in particular was that they had great chemistry, and there's a lot of great spots throughout, and obviously a lot of like harkening back to Bayley's like old school moves, like, you know, the Bayley's belly from like, which was her finisher when she was obviously the hugger. But one of my favourite spots in the match is where you've got Io Sky going for the over the moonsault, Bayley counters it, and then of course she tries to go for a rose plant, but she's you know, limping a bit. But then when she goes to connect with it, Io Sky then flips over and obviously counters it, and just like, that was a really cool sequence. And then of course Bayley then takes advantage of that, goes for a Macho Man elbow, and then obviously delivers a rose plant successfully, and then she wins the Women's Championship. So that felt lovely and a nice, good, feel-good moment for Bayley at WrestleMania. And then of course we come to the Night 2 main event, which was Roman Reigns versus Cody Rhodes. This was one of the reasons why I booked a ticket for WrestleMania. Even as far back as December, I didn't even know whether or not Cody was actually going to be, you know, challenging Roman, regardless of whether or not he won the Royal Rumble. And of course, I was buzzing when he did win the Rumble. Obviously, sad when he relinquished his shot in favour of The Rock challenging him. I know they retconned that, and then of course he definitively did that. But then of course, we had the Night 1 main event, and then we were going to now see what was going to happen on Night 2. The lingering thought in my mind was, is Cody actually going to do it, or is he going to, you know, lose? And where would he go from there if he does? That was the lingering thought on my mind in the lead up to going to WrestleMania. So I was like, please bloody do it, Cody. And then of course he comes out to a big, like, you know, thunderous ovation. You know, Brandy's there on stage, you know, wish him luck before he goes to the ring. And then of course Roman comes out with Paul Heyman, and you know, this is like what I thought might have been the final time that he does so as part of this with the championship. But I didn't even know at that point before the match itself. And then the match itself happens. I tell you what, I know obviously a lot of people will remember this match for all the interferences and all sorts and all the surprises, but the first like 2/3 of this match, where it was like just between Roman and Cody, their chemistry like together one-on-one, absolutely incredible it was. So there were like, you know, callbacks to previous spots from like their last match at WrestleMania, and I also loved the fact that on separate spots you had Roman delivering a crossroads to Cody, and then you had Cody delivering a spear to Roman as well. So just a nice little bit of like, if you do that, I can do that as well. And then of course, then we have to talk about all the crazy surprises that happen. So of course you've got Cody going for a crossroads, and then out comes Jimmy Uso to come and even the odds. We have Jey Uso, so as I know we're getting a little bit of a flashback from the previous night, but then of course Jey delivers a spear to Jimmy and they go for a table just off the side of the stage. But then of course it's then between Roman and Cody again. Roman delivers a very nasty spear, and then of course, you know, at ringside Cody then delivers a spear to Roman through the barricade. Then we have him going for a few more crossroads, and then of course, much like the previous year, Solo Sikoa comes out, Samoan Spike, and then of course a Samoan Spike spear combo, but that's just for a 2 count. Solo Sikoa is absolutely pissed, and then John Cena comes out, and I'm absolutely buzzing at this point. I'm like, who else is coming out? And then of course, Cena takes out both Roman and Solo Sikoa. Solo Sikoa goes through the Spanish announce table for his troubles. And then of course, if you smell, and out comes The Rock. And I'm like, oh bloody hell, what is going on? And I love that, like, that moment where you have just Cena and Rock in the ring. It was like harkening back to years past. And in fact, funny enough, that moment was 11 years to the day since their last WrestleMania match at 29. That felt mad. And then of course, for his troubles, Cena gets hit with a rock bottom. Then one of the craziest moments happens where the Shield's music starts to play, and this is how silly people are, where they're like, oh gosh, Dean Ambrose has come back, he's coming back from AEW, and it was just like, we just knew logistically that could not happen. But of course, out comes Seth Rollins in Shield gear. He's bless him, he's basically using the steel chair that he has as a walking stick. He's about to hit The Rock, but Roman Reigns delivers a Superman punch to him, taking him out. Then of course it's just between Cody and Rock. Obviously Cody's lying down, Rock's got his weight belt out again, he's like, come on boy, and then gong, lights go down, everyone goes mental, and out comes, and then the Undertaker appears in the ring, choke slams The Rock, and then disappears. And then this is my favourite part of the match. I know for all the surprises that we got, the ending stretch is my favourite part. You've got Roman getting to his feet and he's got the steel chair. He's got the opportunity to go after Cody, hit him with a chair and end the match, or go after Seth Rollins and, you know, pay him back for what the split up of the Shield, nearly 10 years to that point. And of course he goes with the latter and, you know, delivers that chair shot, ouch, and then he's going for one last spear because he's like, now I'm done, I'm ready to finish you, Cody. Cody counters the spear, and then 3 consecutive crossroads, and then as Michael Cole says on commentary, finish the story. And everyone is going absolutely insane. Everyone is so happy. I remember just like having to take a few seconds to process that. I was like, did this actually happen? And I'm like, snap back in reality, and I'm like, he's bloody done it. And then everyone and anyone starts to come celebrate with him. So of course, starting with his wife Brandy, and then quite a lot of the babyface roster come out to celebrate with him as well. And even Cody's family comes out to celebrate with him too, and especially celebrating with his mother Michelle. Because one thing Cody promised to do was if he won the championship, the WWE Championship, he would share that with his mum, because he wouldn't get the chance to do it with his late dad, the late Dusty Rhodes. And I just remember feeling all kinds of emotions. I didn't cry during that moment, even though I was quite close to doing so, but that's where it will lead me on to the following night in just a moment. But it was just like, it was so nice to finally see Cody on top of the mountain, and, you know, he's the WWE champion. You know, he left WWE nearly 10 years prior to that point, and he was, you know, he's going to make a name for himself elsewhere. And then of course he comes back to WWE 2 years later with this renewed vision, and he's gonna go, he wants it to be known that he wants to win the WWE Championship. And even if it took him 2 years to finally do it, I was so over the moon for that. And I think that's why the following night on Raw, I was very emotional when they played the little video package in tribute of him. So of course, you've got Triple H, of course, again coming out to say that was a really great show, and he even said there it was probably the best WrestleMania of all time, and I still stand on that. I actually think, in my opinion, WrestleMania 40 is one of the best WrestleManias of all time. That's my opinion, and I will die on that hill. I think in years to come we will be looking at that as not even just like a top 10 WrestleMania, but even maybe even a top 5 WrestleMania if we think about it. I really enjoyed it, but of course Cody comes out, he's new WWE champion, and they air that video package, which was set to Rise Up by Andra Day, and I cried. Yeah, you can see this clip here. I am just bawling my eyes out because it's like, I followed this guy even in the years where he was outside of WWE, where he just wanted to make a name for himself, you know, and, you know, big himself up before he goes on to do bigger and better things. And it was so nice to be part of that moment and see that, and just, you know, he's bloody done it, and everyone's so happy for him. But yeah, that is kind of where my WrestleMania retrospective ends, I guess, talking about it. I know it's been a bit of a long one, which is just mad, but I got very passionate about these topics, so that's why I might talk about it and just not shut up. So apologies if I've bored some people to death here, but I'm a very passionate talker when it comes to topics like this. So yeah, I love that WrestleMania. I know obviously WrestleMania 42 is in a month's time, and I'm sure, I know, hopefully that will be a bit of a fun event, and I'm going to be watching that as well and doing my videos around that. But, you know, fingers crossed, we should be getting something nice. But yeah, I really enjoyed WrestleMania 40, and it's been really nice to kind of like live back those memories and just, you know, good stuff. But anyway, thank you very much for watching, guys. I will finish the video here, and I will also leave you with some advice, and that is always to enjoy yourself, stay safe, and make the most of every opportunity that comes your way. Thank you for watching, and peace.